WWE is known for its thrilling storylines and larger-than-life drama, but sometimes, it crosses a line that leaves fans speechless. There have been moments so shocking, so controversial, that viewers didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just turn off the TV. From tasteless plots to jaw-dropping decisions, WWE has pushed boundaries in the name of ratings. But at what cost? Today, we're diving into the most outrageous times WWE went way too far, when the line between entertainment and excess completely disappeared. Number 10. A cruel humiliation of a wrestling icon, when WWE hit rock bottom in insensitivity. Kicking off the list of WWE's most controversial moments, there's perhaps no better example than a segment that outraged fans worldwide. Not just because it was tasteless, but because it crossed a line so blatantly it left viewers immediately uncomfortable. Jim Ross, a name etched into the hearts of wrestling fans across generations, wasn't just a legendary commentator. He was the voice, the spirit behind the mic, the man who turned punches into poetry and matches into epics. His voice carried WWE through its most iconic eras, delivering raw emotion that connected millions to the action in the ring. But behind the glory lay a bitter reality, a long-standing, strained relationship with WWE chairman Vince McMahon. For years, Vince seemed to take a strange pleasure in using Jim Ross as the butt of on-air humiliation. Whether it was being assaulted without reason, fired on live television, or made the subject of crude skits, JR was repeatedly targeted in ways that felt more personal than professional. But nothing compared to what happened in 2012, when WWE crossed a line that many believe should never have been touched. During an episode of Monday Night Raw, fans watched a segment where Vince McMahon himself mocked Jim Ross's real-life battle with Bell's palsy, a condition that had caused facial paralysis. This wasn't storyline. This wasn't entertainment. This was cruelty. Vince exaggerated JR's slurred speech, mimicked his drooping face, and made a mockery of his condition for laughs. There was no plot. No match. Just a disgusting display of televised ridicule watched by millions. Jim Ross didn't appear in that episode. In fact, he had just been fired from his commentary role. So while JR was struggling with both his health and his job security, Vince chose that moment to kick a man while he was down. The backlash wasn't limited to fans. Even Backstage staff reportedly felt disturbed and disappointed by the stunt. In later interviews, Jim Ross admitted this was one of the most painful moments of his entire career, not only because it hurt his professional pride, but because it mocked a deeply personal and painful struggle. After decades of loyalty and excellence, you'd expect respect. Instead, JR was reduced to the punchline of a cruel joke broadcast to millions. Worse yet, Vince McMahon never apologized. No regrets. No explanation. Just cold silence. And that silence only made it more bitter. This remains one of the most controversial moments in WWE history, not because it was bold or shocking, but because it revealed a chilling level of heartlessness behind the curtain. Tragically, it was just the beginning of a long line of incidents where WWE would continue pushing the boundaries of decency to disturbing new extremes. Number 9. WWE and the outrageous moment they exploited Eddie Guerrero's death. In 2006, WWE made a decision that sparked outrage among fans and blurred the lines of morality. Just months earlier, on November 13, 2005, Eddie Guerrero had suddenly passed away at the age of 38. His death wasn't just a heartbreaking loss to fans, it shook the entire professional wrestling world. Eddie wasn't only one of the most talented performers of his time, but also a beloved friend and respected figure backstage. Immediately following his passing, WWE aired several emotional tribute videos. It seemed Eddie would be remembered with dignity and honor. But only a few months later, that respect was shattered when WWE turned his tragic death into a tool for manufactured drama. At the time, Rey Mysterio, Eddie's closest friend, was being pushed as a heroic underdog, with a storyline centered on winning the championship in Eddie's memory. Fans embraced the angle for its inspirational tone. But then, Randy Orton entered the picture. Orton, playing the arrogant heel, faced Rey Mysterio on an episode of SmackDown in February 2006. During their confrontation, he coldly delivered a line that stunned the arena into silence. "Eddie's not in heaven. Eddie's down there, in hell." It wasn't just a heel promo, it was a blatant insult to someone who had recently died. The crowd didn't boo because they disliked Orton's character. They were genuinely angry at WWE's cruelty. Rey Mysterio already had the audience's full support. WWE didn't need to exploit Eddie's death to create emotion. Instead, the company crossed a line, leaving fans disgusted and disappointed. Members of the Guerrero family, especially Chavo, publicly condemned the segment. They believed WWE was profiting off personal grief, and they weren't wrong. Even Randy Orton himself later admitted he regretted saying that line. While he was simply following the script, he understood the damage it caused and the pain it brought. This wasn't just a controversial moment, it was a clear example of WWE's willingness to sacrifice basic human decency for the sake of attention. And for many fans, it's a moment they will never forget, or forgive. Number 8. When WWE hit a creative low with a bizarre love story between Dawn Marie and Torrie Wilson's real father. WWE has long been known for pushing boundaries with outrageous storylines, often to the point of being downright uncomfortable. But among all the moments that left fans scratching their heads and asking, why would they do this? Few compare to the absurd and cringe-worthy saga involving Torrie Wilson, Dawn Marie, and Torrie's real-life father, Al Wilson. In 2002, Torrie Wilson was at the height of her popularity on SmackDown, one of WWE's most beloved female stars, known for her striking looks and confident persona. But instead of giving her a meaningful storyline, WWE threw her into one of the strangest angles ever aired on wrestling television. It all began when Dawn Marie, a seductive, manipulative character, developed an odd obsession with Torrie. Their interactions became increasingly awkward and suggestive. Rather than escalating into a typical feud between two women, WWE took a wildly unexpected turn. Dawn began seducing Torrie's actual father. That's right, no actors, no body doubles. WWE brought Torrie's real-life dad, Al Wilson, into the storyline. And from there, things went completely off the rails. Dawn openly flirted with Al on screen, delivering provocative lines and showing excessive affection, all in front of a visibly distressed Torrie. Scenes of the mismatched couple kissing and touching were broadcast without filter, making both fans and even WWE employees deeply uncomfortable. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more inappropriate, WWE doubled down, airing an on-screen wedding between Dawn and Al during an episode of SmackDown. And no, this wasn't a traditional wedding. Both appeared in their underwear. It was nearly impossible to watch without cringing, especially given that Al Wilson was over 60 at the time. And WWE still wasn't done. They followed it up with a honeymoon segment, complete with shots of Dawn and Al in bed, giggling and implying they'd had an exhausting night of passion. Then, in a sudden and bizarre twist, the storyline took a dark turn. Al Wilson died. The reason? According to WWE's script, he died from exhaustion after too much sex on his honeymoon. Yes, WWE actually scripted the death of Torrie Wilson's real father due to overexertion with her on-screen rival. What came next was even more surreal. Torrie was forced to act heartbroken on TV during a funeral segment, while Dawn Marie, now a widow, cried crocodile tears, then turned on Torrie, blaming her for her father's death because she never accepted their love. The entire storyline was met with disgust and ridicule. It wasn't shocking in a bold or groundbreaking way, it was bad, tasteless, over the top, and completely devoid of emotional intelligence. Years later, Torrie Wilson herself admitted she hated the storyline but felt she had no choice but to go along with it. For fans, it remains an unforgettable, and not in a good way, reminder of just how far WWE has sometimes gone in its pursuit of attention over storytelling quality. Number 7. Stephanie McMahon, Sedatives, and Triple H's Twisted Love Coup. If you thought the wedding between Dawn Marie and Al Wilson was the weirdest storyline WWE ever produced, buckle up, because what happened in 1999 was on a whole other level of absurd. At the time, WWE was portraying Stephanie McMahon as a sweet, innocent young woman, and her romance with wrestler Test was being framed like a modern-day fairy tale. Everything was building toward a grand televised wedding, the kind of happy ending you'd expect from a classic love story. And then Triple H showed up. Just as the ceremony was about to begin, Triple H interrupted and dropped a bombshell that left fans and the entire McMahon family in shock. A video of him driving Stephanie to a Las Vegas wedding chapel and marrying her on the spot. As wild as that sounds, it wasn't even the worst part. In the footage, Stephanie was completely unconscious, unaware of what was happening around her. That's right, Triple H had drugged the boss's daughter and married her while she was knocked out. Then, to make things even more disturbing, He implied they had consummated the marriage that very night. Fans were stunned and outraged. What was intended as entertainment came off more like a dark, twisted abuse of power. The storyline didn't just cross ethical boundaries, it crushed them entirely. Ironically, it was from this highly controversial angle that a real-life romance blossomed between Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. Eventually, they became one of the most powerful couples in WWE history. But no matter how it ended in real life, there's no denying, this storyline remains one of the most jaw-droppingly inappropriate moments WWE has ever aired. Number 6. Vince McMahon and the shocking N-word moment on live TV. Oh boy! When it comes to outrageous moments on live television, no one tops the king of arrogance himself, Vince McMahon. As the head of WWE, Vince has always positioned himself at the center of attention. The problem? Sometimes, he goes about it in the worst possible way. At Survivor Series 2005, Vince appeared in a backstage segment where he casually walked past then WWE champion John Cena. Trying to act cool and tap into street culture, Vince turned to Cena and said, "What's good in the hood?" Then followed it up with, "Keep it up, my N. Yes." The billionaire chairman of a global entertainment company dropped that word, live on national television. And if you think that was the end of it, think again. Just a few feet away stood Booker T and his wife, Charmel. Playing it for laughs, Booker responded with his signature line, "Tell me he did not just say that." But his expression said everything. This wasn't funny. It was awkward. Deeply uncomfortable. The kind of moment that leaves everyone watching squirming in disbelief. The most ironic part? The person who approved this segment for air was Vince McMahon himself. There was no storyline context. No feud. No payoff. Just a reckless attempt at being edgy, where a company leader equated shock value with entertainment. What came out of it was one of the most tone-deaf and cringe-worthy moments in WWE history. Number 5. When a funeral became a joke on WWE television. Think things couldn't get any worse? Brace yourself, because WWE had one more unbelievable masterstroke up its sleeve. In 1999, Big Show's father passed away. Instead of giving him time to grieve in private, WWE made the shocking decision to turn his personal loss into part of a storyline. And no, it wasn't handled with emotion or respect. WWE crafted an angle in which Big Boss Man, the resident villain, mocked Big Show's grief in the most over-the-top, tasteless way possible. It all culminated in a funeral segment that fans still talk about, mostly because they wish they could unsee it. The scene, as Big Show knelt in mourning beside his father's casket, Big Boss Man drove up in a police car, hooked the coffin to the back, and dragged it away through the cemetery. Big Show clung to it in desperation, trying to stop it, but completely helpless. This wasn't a horror movie. It wasn't a dark comedy. It was WWE, and they apparently thought fans would find it funny? In reality, most viewers were stunned and disgusted. Watching Big Show, who had actually just lost his father, forced to act out something so ridiculous and offensive left many wondering, what were they thinking? Later, on the Something to Wrestle With podcast, Bruce Pritchard revealed the chaotic behind-the-scenes details. Vince McMahon personally insisted they film at a real cemetery, even though actual funerals were being held that day. They used a police car with a loudspeaker, disrupted the services, and were permanently banned from returning. But the most shocking part? WWE never apologized. And the segment aired as if nothing was wrong. Number 4. Muhammad Hassan, the angle that cost WWE dearly. In 2004, WWE introduced Muhammad Hassan, a character meant to reflect the anger of an Arab American facing post-9/11 discrimination. Unlike stereotypical villains, Hassan didn't wave a foreign flag or cheat to win. He was simply furious at the injustice he felt. And that's exactly why fans reacted so strongly. At first, the storyline had substance. But as always, WWE didn't know when to stop. In July 2005, Hassan entered a feud with The Undertaker. What followed, in one infamous episode of SmackDown, became one of the most controversial segments WWE ever produced. After his manager Divery was beaten by The Undertaker, Hassan knelt in prayer. Suddenly, 5 masked men in black ski masks and camo gear stormed the ring. Armed with nightsticks and piano wire, They assaulted The Undertaker and carried Divery away like a fallen martyr, mimicking extremist propaganda imagery. If that wasn't bad enough, imagine what happened when this aired on the exact same day as the London bombings that killed 52 people. No edits. No delay. WWE aired the segment in full that night. The backlash was immediate. UPN, the network airing SmackDown, was furious. Media outlets exploded. And just like that, Muhammad Hassan was pulled from TV. He had been scheduled to win the world title at SummerSlam, but his career was over before it even peaked. The irony. Mark Capani, the man behind the Hassan character, wasn't Middle Eastern at all, he was Italian-American. But WWE's reckless creative choices erased his wrestling future in one devastating blow. Number 3. When a real snake terrified the entire WWE. WWE has always had a flair for pushing boundaries, especially when controversy is involved. But in 1991, they didn't just cross a line, they completely obliterated it. At the time, Jake the Snake Roberts had transformed into a cold, calculating villain. No longer the mysterious anti-hero, Jake was now pure menace. And his target? None other than Macho Man, Randy Savage. On the November 23rd episode of WWE Superstars, fans were expecting a typical face-off. What they got instead left everyone speechless. In the middle of the ring, Jake reached into his signature bag and pulled out a real king cobra. Not a prop. Not rubber. A live, fanged, venomous snake. Randy Savage was tied to the ropes, unable to escape. Jake let the cobra sink its fangs into Savage's arm, on live national television, and it did not let go. Literally. The crowd panicked. Kids cried. The announcers screamed in horror. Even Jake Roberts began to panic when the snake refused to release. No one was sure whether the cobra had been defanged or still carried venom. After what felt like an eternity, the snake finally let go, leaving Savage's arm swollen and full of bite marks. The camera quickly cut away as medical staff rushed in. And yet, somehow, Savage remained calm. In fact, he insisted on doing the segment. Still not insane enough for you? Before the taping, Savage actually demanded Jake let the snake bite him backstage, just to be sure it was safe. Jake agreed. While the segment became one of WWE's most unforgettable moments, it also resulted in the New York State Athletic Commission banning Jake from ever using snakes on TV again. If you want a perfect example of WWE's dangerous mix of commitment and chaos during that era, this is it. Number 2. When WWE turned the ring into a bedroom and lost its way. In 2006, Edge was riding high as WWE's top heel. After John Cena had barely survived a brutal Elimination Chamber match, Edge shocked the world by cashing in the first-ever Money in the Bank contract and stealing the WWE Championship, a twist that sent the arena into a frenzy. But that shock was just the beginning. The next night on Raw, instead of delivering a classic villain promo, WWE decided to take things much further. Under Vince McMahon's orders, the company aired what they proudly called a live sex celebration between Edge and his on-screen girlfriend, Lita, right in the middle of the ring. No innuendos. No subtlety. WWE said it outright. Live sex celebration. They set up a giant bed, threw on pillows and satin sheets, dimmed the lights like it was a late-night movie set. Lita appeared in lingerie, Edge in boxers, and together they climbed under the covers to celebrate his championship win by rolling around suggestively, in front of millions of viewers. At one point, Lita even suffered an accidental wardrobe malfunction on live TV. Jerry Lawler screamed with excitement, while Jim Ross tried to keep things somewhat professional. But many fans weren't entertained, they were stunned. Not because it was provocative, but because WWE had clearly pushed TV boundaries way too far. And the saddest part? Lita never wanted to be part of it. She was reportedly against the idea but was told she'd be fired if she refused. Although the ratings that night spiked, the segment left a stain on WWE's legacy, and played a major role in Lita's decision to leave the company shortly after. Number 1. Katie Vick, when WWE hit rock bottom in storytelling. The internet might forgive, but it never forgets. And in the long, bizarre history of WWE's most insane creative decisions, nothing, and I mean nothing, tops the disgrace that was the Katie Vick storyline. In 2002, During the ruthless aggression era, WWE was heavily pushing Triple H as the ultimate villain. Meanwhile, Kane, still wearing his iconic mask, was positioned as a top contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. Instead of building a compelling rivalry, WWE chose to go down one of the most disturbing paths imaginable. It started with a promo on Raw, where Triple H claimed Kane once had a girlfriend named Katie Vick, and that he had killed her in a car accident. But WWE didn't stop there. Not even close. The following week, they aired a segment that shocked even the most hardened wrestling fans. In a pre-taped skit, Triple H, wearing a Kane mask, climbed into a coffin next to a mannequin, implied to be Katie Vick's corpse, and simulated necrophilia. No symbolism. No subtlety. Just a crude, graphic, and utterly revolting attempt at entertainment. Fans were horrified. TV networks were outraged. Even longtime commentator Jerry Lawler couldn't hide his disgust. Backstage, many wrestlers reportedly felt embarrassed that the company they worked for had allowed something so tasteless to air. The backlash was swift and brutal. WWE had no choice but to immediately scrap the entire angle. Katie Vick was never mentioned again. No resolution. No explanation. WWE acted like it had never happened, desperate to bury the mess. But the worst part? Vince McMahon, the man who approved the whole thing, thought it was funny. He reportedly laughed out loud during the video edit, believing he was creating a memorable moment. And he wasn't wrong, just not in the way he intended. To this day, Katie Vick remains the most infamous and universally condemned storyline WWE has ever produced. John Cena vs. Bray Wyatt, the creepy child choir. In the long and twisted history of WWE storytelling, few moments blurred the line between theatrical and disturbing quite like the infamous child choir segment involving John Cena and Bray Wyatt. It took place during their intense rivalry, a feud built on mind games, manipulation, and psychological warfare, but nothing prepared fans for what happened that night. As Cena stood in the ring, expecting a typical confrontation, the lights dimmed and an eerie melody began to echo through the arena. The song? He's got the whole world in his hands. But this wasn't an uplifting moment, it was unsettling. Slowly, a group of children began to emerge from the shadows, forming a choir. What made it truly bizarre was their appearance. Each child wore a sheep mask, hiding their expressions, adding a sense of dread that had nothing to do with wrestling. Bray Wyatt led the choir like a twisted preacher, his voice blending with the children's as they sang. The lyrics, usually comforting, now felt haunting. The symbolism was unmistakable. Wyatt was planting the idea that he could even control innocence itself. Cena, known for his heroic image and strong resolve, stood visibly shaken, unsure of how to react to this surreal and unsettling scene. The segment was clearly designed to get under the audience's skin, and it worked. This wasn't just psychological mind games between two wrestlers. It was children, innocence, and religious undertones wrapped in a chilling performance, all to make Cena look vulnerable in a way fans had never seen. While WWE has always used theatrics to sell stories, this moment crossed into uncomfortable territory. It wasn't vulgar or violent, but it was deeply unnerving. Using kids as tools in a psychological attack raised serious questions about the boundaries of entertainment in professional wrestling. For many viewers, it wasn't just creepy. It was one of the few times WWE seemed to lose sight of where storylines should end and discomfort begins. Cena may have survived the mind games, but this moment remains one of the most bizarre and controversial in his career, and in WWE history. What do you think was WWE's most shocking moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more wild wrestling stories from Wrestling Sphere.